Well, we start another setup, and here we have John's ES339 Epiphone, and yeah, this one, yeah, ES339. Look at that. So I've already put the replacement nut on and taken the plastic one off, just because it's sort of a preparatory thing I can do offline. Excuse me, to shorten the video a bit. And I've marked the frets in black pen. What we're going to do with this one is to replace the switch and replace the jack, and check and make sure they're all good. As John's had quite a few breaks, failures on switches, and he loves the guitar and doesn't, wants to be able to totally rely on it. So we've got Switchcraft, got a tool one here, but that's all they had available at the time, so I still went for Switchcraft because taller is fine, and a Switchcraft jack. So we'll probably start out with those. Might make more sense, really. So getting these done is oh, sorry, it's not a very good Are you thinking straight? No, obviously I'm not. Yeah, not an easy task to get these things out. So it sort of, first of all depends on how well, how tight all the wires are in there. Now I've got to find me a special device for removing things. So I've got a mixture of tools and bits and bobs, wire soldering bits, in this box over here, which I haven't kind of reintegrated into the workshop yet, so I've got to sort of do that bit by bit. So I'm looking for a couple of things. Right, there we go. We'll be with you in a second. Right, just a few bits and pieces in the soldering kind of world. So first thing is this. So the tricky part with these types of things is that when you undo these things, obviously they fall into the depths of the what's it. This is, oh blimey, that is a little bit on the stiffened side. Right, so we don't have a lot of room, so I'm going to have to do some kind of looking and poking around and stuff. Oh blimey, this is, oh dear, dear, dear. Oh, this is where I'm going to immediately wish I'd never said I'd do this. Right, I can see straight away that the amount of wire here is non-existent. We're working on some, whatchamacallit cables, snap cables, a mixture of snap cables, which seem to, well, they're possibly in the way. Something's in the way. I'm concerned that we might not have enough wire going on in here, so let's see if we can drop this out first without getting it caught up, because there's sort of another wire that it's trying to get tangled up in, which is part of the snap cable thing, quick lock thing. So as I'm finding my way to the somewhere where I can possibly get this thing out. My concern is how much or little wire we've got. Okay, well thankfully we've got more wire than expected. Okay, I'm just trying to see why this would be faulty, if at all. This looks a sort of standard quality Chinese thingy, but there's a what looks like a pretty poor solder joint. So I don't know. We'll go with what we've got. I mean, replace it. So just check one thing first. Yeah, that's a good fit. Okay. So we'll try and just do a straight swap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just mask off around here a bit, just to give me a bit of peace of mind, basically. It's very difficult to keep all of this clear, but if I can just protect the paintwork a little bit. I feel generally a little bit happier about it. We can pull this stuff up later. This gives me a bit of scratch protection, if you see what I mean. So I can sort of put something down there and maybe even stick it down if I have to. Okay, so now what I don't instantly know, and this is what I shall use my meter for, is just let me identify which wire is which without taking the whole thing apart. I just heard a terrible piece of news. So if it wasn't already bad enough that Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II passed away at the weekend, Friday, well, whenever it was, if that wasn't bad, I just heard on the radio that Mrs. McCluskey from Grange Hill has passed away. No. I don't know. If you're British, you'll know the depth of my grief and my mourning. If you're not British, you won't know what heaven's name I'm talking about, which is okay. So I don't have a lot of room, so holding this still is a tricky business. I'm going to see if I can attack it from different angles. Maybe. Right. Well, oh yes, I was going to test the things. So before I thingy, I want to make sure I get which is which pickup. So there's the ground, there's the pickup. Ooh. I see. That's right, that's not the ground, is it? Silly me. Let's put the ground on the back. That's not terribly convincing. That's good. Bridge pickup. Ah, so we don't know which is which. 8. That registered 8. I would suggest that's the bridge, though I have a feeling bridge is the blue with the white. What I'm not seeing is anything off the neck one. Oh, little hint of it. Right, well, suggest first of all that the joints aren't good. So let me heat up the soldering iron. So yeah, that doesn't look fab as far as I can see. So this could be why it's, well, it could account for why it's looking like it doesn't work reliably. So this will be a bit of a slow old thing, really. It's not going to be a quick job. So after I've changed these over, I will do a setup which includes changing the bridge for a roller bridge, which we've got here. It will be a nice addition. Just warming up the iron. Okay, so let's get some tip cleaner on there. I need to buy some more of that because this has turned into a muddy lunar landscape. Yeah, Mrs. McCluskey. She was, in some ways, she was as much a figure of stability and common sense and decency as Her Majesty the Queen was in our strange young days. And actually, I'm not entirely sure, if I'm absolutely honest, I'm not completely sure that I was still too much of a kid while I was watching that. I think I was probably older than I should have been to be watching it. Okay, so concern about this is that I am not getting a good signal off this red one here. What do they do? Do they go through? I'm just getting my head around this. Could it be they go through the pot first, and they go through the pot first, don't they? That's why I'm not getting the signal. Thanks for all of those who pointed it out to me. Okay, 71882. So if we, let's get my little things. We'll check which one's reacting to the thing, but I need my clips. Not those. I need my bulldog clippy things. You know the ones. These things. So what I'll do is I shall attach this one to here. I'm basically freeing up my hands. So that goes to the red, and I'll be able to use this to find which one represents which thing. So that's the earth there. That goes to the black one here, and we should register now 7, whatever it is, 8, no 7 if it's the neck pickup. Okay, so good thing about this is you can affect it with a magnet or a piece of metal. So when I move this away, it goes down, that's fine. If I do the same thing over here, it doesn't do anything. So I'm correct in saying that the red is, I'll just write it down because I always forget, red equals neck, white in this case equals bridge, and white is the output as well. Anyway, so that's good. So I know which is which. Pickups are okay, thankfully. Can get that out of the way for a minute. What I don't know is why the switch was intermittently malfunctioning, but in a way we don't really need to know that. We'll take John's word for it that it isn't stable, isn't or wasn't stable, and so it does. For his peace of mind, we're going to replace it and put a decent or another best possible quality one in place. So there's not a lot of wiring here, and these are stretched pretty thin as it is. So the next one I want to get out is the bridge one, which unless I can drag it in, I can. Right, so these are these are the live ones. So I'm marking that one up to differentiate it between that and the output from the switch, which is this one, which is again stretched to its limits really. So we may have to do some adjustment. Now this is making it difficult. Again, that wasn't a very good joint, so and we've got a ground and earth lead, or earth connection here, which we'll try and remove as well. This is often quite difficult to heat up enough because it's going through a pretty large chunk of metal, and just everything gets hot, but it doesn't do what you want. There you go. Right, that's free. Okay, so you can see that we've got precious small amount of wire. We've got some shrink wrap or some shielding there. Really, to make this work comfortably, in this one we've got ground here, and we've got ground there. Center is ground, isn't it? I believe it is. Left and right, yeah. So those two are. What's that one? The output. Yeah. Okay. You can actually use them the other way around, couldn't you? But it still doesn't make sense. So we're going to use it like that. So we've got the. Closer together. No, just look at. So we've got the output here, the ground here, and then we've got the left and right input here. Wow, this is big, chunky, stiff switch. But to do this, I'm going to need? So yes, I'm going to need a bit more room. So this coming over here is okay, but we've got to get round to the other side comfortably. So the question is, do we unpick a bit more wiring, or can we modify this to make it work? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just, if I can, I'm going to try and cut a little chamfer onto that so it stands some chance of being able to go through here. Let me just look at this. Oh no, yeah. Okay, so So this one we can get attached there. We can get to both of those sides there, but we can't get round to the, or can't easily get round to the output over here unless we extend this wire, and that's probably the best bet rather than cutting things back. There's not an awful lot of things here, so extending the wire, we don't have enough of that shrink wrap. We've got a small amount, but it's not a brilliant size, so that's got to go on my list of urgent-ish things to buy. So I'll try and find something as smaller diameter as possible. So we want to make a small join, cover it up, and then have that tucked away. So we can do that. So let's get a suitable bit of wire. I'm going to get a bit of soft wire because I prefer soft wire since we're bending it all around in there. To me, it's a much better material, the silicon-based stuff. And we don't need a ton of it, but we will need it. Slightly stripped back, and we'll tin it at both ends. So one end will be going into the back of the switch, and the other end will connect up to the bit that's currently too short. What have I done? I've used red, but that's fine. It doesn't really matter. I know where it's going. Where is it going? It's going round to the output, which is, what did we say it was? The white one. Yeah. We didn't say it, but it is the white one. So this joining one, I'm going to put a blob of solder on it because I'm going to use that blob to enable the joining part of things. I'm going to put this over here, and then I'm going to maybe use this to hold this, or maybe not, who knows. So I'm just going to make sure I've got a clean run at this. It's a bit of a burnt, sizzled piece of wire so far, but we should make a nice join there. Okay, so there's our extension. Here's our shield, or shielding, that thing. Protection. Yeah, I suppose it's a shielding. We need a bit of hot air blower. And I'm going to fire this. Keeping it away from the paintwork. Okay, so that's that extended. It's a bit stiff around the joint, but that's the best we can do. So now what I'm looking for here is that this thing here where the ground connects to this part here. I often, it's a funny thing, but I often don't ground switches because I've never found it necessary to do it. You have to do it if you're using them to provide a ground further up the guitar, as it were, but to further through the system. But here, I'm doing it because it's already been done that way. So it's a bit of a. The problem is, once you've done it, is trying to get it so that it stays healthily away from the lugs that you're going to put the hot signal into. Okay, so this wants to move and wriggle. Okay, that's a nice solid ground connection, and then what I'll do is I'll trim it back like so. So there's a nice chunky gap. Thing with the these tabs is we can bend them further out as well. There's plenty of spare room inside the guitar that keeps things away from things, so we can carefully bend these out so that we're well clear of any well clear of the ground here. Okay, so what we want is this one to come around here. We don't want a ton of wire, so I've probably got too much on there, but we've got to get around the corner comfortably, so I think I'll just call it there. It's good to have enough, but we don't need tons more. Okay, so this one, the unmarked white one, is the output, which is this one here, and I'm going to run that through there like that. And make a nice connect. Now, I say make a nice connection. I want to keep that rubber away. The danger, or the difficulty of doing this is when you solder these with the rubber wires, the rubber wire tends to slip forward, or should I say the wire goes forward and the rubber comes up against the heated part. When that happens, you get burnt rubber and not a lot else. Okay, that's fine. That's a nice solid connection. Now, looking at these here, the question is which is which. It's whichever you want it to be. So we know that red is, in this case, red is, how are we going to get this to work most safeliest? Push that in there like so, I think that way. So red is going to be this one, which is this one. So we're back to here for red, and I'm going to come through from the inside out. Again, as much as possible, keeping it away from the ground business. I think that's about right. Once it's in place, it shouldn't be able to get any closer, so there shouldn't be any risk of grounding or shorting out. Good. And then we're going to go over here to the bridge side. Again, direct it through from this side. That looks about right. I always think these switches, they are pretty primitive when you look at them. So the whole thing is a kind of 50s. You feel like you're in the 50s using 50s. Right, I've got a piece of wire escaping here, which is making a mess of everything, which I'll have to trim off. Okay, so that is now connected. Take that bit, take this errant wire out of the way so it can't stray off and connect with somebody we don't want it to connect with. So there we have our bits and pieces, and our up is that way. So now we've got to go back in here, back down, somehow. Oops, I've got a little piece of stray solder gone in there. Right, so it's a case of encouraging this switch now to lean over far enough, because this is, of course, is a taller one, to get it in. Oh, this will be funny if actually it won't get in far enough to come up through here, and it's meant really for a tall Les Paul. Oh, thank God for that. That would have been an embarrassment, wouldn't it? Okay, I'm going to have to move this out of the way, and what I'm slightly worried about here is this doesn't appear to go up far enough. Is that because it's trapping a wire somewhere? Sorry, a bad view, terrible view. Come on everybody, why are you getting in my way? There's wires, cables sort of clogging the way. haven't got hands thin enough to get in here and push things out of the way. Holy cow, this is doing my head in a little bit. Come on, you come through here. So we're actually saying this, this isn't long enough to come through. I do not believe it. How shallow is this? Well, you know what? I don't imagine for 1 minute how this switch could actually work on a Les Paul if it can't come up through the plywood or the timber of this top. That's just incredible. But you know what? It is actually too shallow. Yes, it's too shallow. Would you believe it? How is that supposed to get through a Les Paul? That is unbelievable. So that's a no-go. Why didn't anyone tell me that? Right, well, I think I'm going to just have to put this on hold now and go and buy another switch. That's a real... that's a pain. I mean, honestly. So now I have to know the length of this bit, and there's not a standard. That's just terrific. So this bit is what? 9 mils of thread, whatever. So basically, I've just thrown away 20 odd quid with a switch I can't use for anything. What guitar could that possibly work on? Are we saying that that's a 6mm ply? Are we saying the Les Paul hole in the top is less than 6mm? Really? I don't quite believe it somehow. Yep, 6mm, if that, 5 or 6mm. And this will not do. Thanks, Switchcraft, for wasting my evening. I bet you I won't even be able to find another one either. Right, well, let's put that on hold. I guess I will come back to it another day when it's going to be capable of working. Well, look, I guess I can just unhook this and I will have to do the leveling and come back and do the thing another time when I finally got the right piece. Duh. Okay, well, we'll just do the most of it then, hey? Because we've done the nut. Ooh, how annoying. Luckily, we've got a couple more days to waste, in inverted commas, because John won't be coming to collect this until next week. But, you know, that's mighty annoying. Come on, thank you. That's good because the paper catches the little spills as you pull them off like that. So, right, well, we'll leave that. We know what's what is written on the board. Okay, forget the electrics. Off with this, off with its head. Why don't we concentrate on precision leveling? Now, the other thing I've noticed about this guitar, by the way, let's put you down here. The other thing I've noticed about this guitar is that the truss rod is not responsive. So it's got nice low action, but it has a whiff more relief than I'd want to start out with. And I have tried the adjustment, and I have to say, just to tighten it up, make sure it's in properly, that is, had it. There's no more adjustment in there. So we are confined. Well, it's not bad, but I'd ideally want a bit more control, but there isn't any. So we have to live with that. It's what it is. It's not the perfect scenario, but let not the perfect be the enemy of the good, eh? Is what some wise people say. So let's just get on and do the leveling. So we've got the new nut fitted, we've got the action set at the last fret, and ideally we would have had a bit of adjustment there on the neck relief. I would have flattened it a tiny bit more. I would say right now it's about 0.2 mils of curve, which is pretty optimal for a guitar like this, but it, you know, bugs me that we don't have the option to go in both directions for adjustment, really. So that's just my personal take on it. But we've got what we've got, and you know, it's still a much loved guitar. So I'm going to just get straight on with the leveling, and as always with a sort of first pass with the rod, tells me where the high and low spots are. So we've got low, 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 low. So we can do a little bit more, and then the second bit of work like this tends to tell me how severe those hills and valleys are, as I call them. So if we do it a little longer and we see we start to see which of the low parts really are low. So that's low still. That one's just getting touched now. That one's just getting touched. Those are picked up here. Those are still low here, and we're getting a little bit of touch there. So it's got a bit of ups and downs in it, but we can take care of that with a little bit more careful leveling. And yes, for superstition's sake, I have turned the rod round. I do it sometimes because I don't know, I guess I'm partly thinking if there's any bias in the tool, then I'm sort of changing it round. So we've definitely got a low spot here which is resisting anything. So what I'll do is, well, what we might find is we can check to see at this low action whether it's turning out or turning up any little tiny bit of sizzle. So it's quite interesting when you do this, because if you play it first and you hear the slightly sizzling or starting to be choked areas, what you find very quickly is that working with the truss rod, or the banana we could call it, quickly confirms why you're hearing that sort of beginnings of a choke, and it's almost always because the frets are low. So these here are quite a lot lower than the ones on either side, and the real choice now is, do we continue to try and bottom those low frets out, or do we get a playable action at the action that's set? Now the action that's set is very low, and that's livable with, right? So it's the little bit of unevenness that is left there is not so much that it causes any problems at the low action that we set. But that's the guiding principle. Does it play okay? If it does, stop leveling, even though I can see there's some unevenness still left, but we don't mind as long as it's not interfering with play, shall we say. Oh well, we can get most of this done and just be waiting for the electronics again. That is an absolute, I'll tell you now, my inexperience, you could call it, but I had no idea that those two types of switch had different lengths of shaft. What do they call it? Threaded shaft. There's absolutely no good reason why they would. So you hear that, we're saying 14th fret, cross into the G is choking out, so at this low action. So now that's what the goal is now, is alleviate that slight choke out. So I'm going to recalibrate for the G track, which is the one where high E bends tend to choke out. If they're going to choke out, it's there for geometrical reasons. So anyway, I'm going to get this so that we can hear it clear up. So that was E on the 14th bending up into the G track, and we heard that it was choking out. So now we'll go to work with the banana tool in the G track, and it's now here, when in leveling this track, we should clear out that slight bit of choke out. The geometry of the neck is quite interesting when you think about what's happening while you're bending a string across a fret, or across the neck's radius, if you like. If you think about the cross-section shape of the neck when you're bending, that's actually looking at it end on. You're actually we often forget that if you keep thinking about it cross-section like a curve, you're bending an E string from an anchor point that's down here at the bottom of that curve, and you're bending it up a hill, and because the anchor points are still at the bottom of the hill, you're pulling the string up the hill, and you create this height differential, and that height differential robs you of the clearance. So it makes it ultra important for a low action to have the G track really leveled. So as always, first check is that all the notes play, and I can also see where, if anywhere, there's still sort of just about lowish. We're still low on the 4th fret. That is definitely low. It's been low all the way across. Now the question is, does the 14th fret bend choke? Clear. In fact, we'll do it one more little touch just to make sure, but you can hear that's the result, or that's the achievement of using this method, is that you've got a really low action, and the choke out that you would have got bending a high E, well, for example, if you wouldn't have wanted to live with it, so you would have ended up by raising your action up a little higher. So this leveling means that we don't have to do that. We can keep the same low action, and the bends won't choke. So how about that? It's great to be able to hear it. You know this method works when you hear that disappear, that noise. So now I'm moving across to the D track. Now, interestingly, there's sort of different, what would you call it? Different phases of the neck when you're leveling, or different phases of the leveling process. So the first track, the E track, kind of is always the diagnostic track. So it tells you quickly what's going on with the topography of the neck. I'd say the E and the B, and so they tell you kind of what to expect. The G is the critical area where high E bends will choke out. So G is where you clear up those bends, which is great. Then when you come on to the D, well, D and the A and the E, the wound strings, tend to be the ones that, because they move more in their rotation as they spin when you hit them, they tend to need a little bit more space, and as a result they are also very sensitive to the topography of the neck. So if there are a series of ups and downs, those hills will rob the strings of that extra little bit of space. And so interestingly, this method seems to allow me to clear, if you like, the very tops of those hills out of the way of the spinning strings, and what we get from that is a reduction in what I call fret slap. Clean notes. Right, I'll give you that little rattle that follows the note. That's what I call fret slap. And so there's not much of it on the A, but there's a little bit of it on the E. But again, this is what the process can help. Whoops, I haven't calibrated. This is what the process, this method, allows us to do. So if I recalibrate now for the A, so as the point I was trying to make before I confused myself was that from the D onwards and to the wound strings, what I'm really concentrating on doing is, yes, taking away any high frets, but they tend not to be any individual high frets, and actually not too many. We already know where the low frets are going to be. So the principal part of doing the wound strings is to get rid of fret slap. And fret slap is alleviated as we map this curve of this tool onto what we might think of as a bumpy fretboard. And so if we imagine we're holding it kind of in the middle and letting, or holding it equally and letting the curve of the tool pretty much do its work, that's only the end of the file hitting the first fret. You can get longer ones, but I tend to prefer to use this size. I've got a bass sized U channel one as well for doing bass setups, so but I tend to use this size here all the time for guitar. So a little bit left down this end, tiny bit. So I'm going to, now this is where it gets a bit pseudo-scientific. So I say in my language, I'm going to concentrate a bit on this end of the fretboard. And what I mean is, I'm going to just put a little bit of more pressure on here compared to the rest of it. So still, everything's still touching, but I am focusing a bit more force onto this one, because I know there's a little bit of hills getting in the way still. So what I'm now listening out for is just an improvement in the open or the fretted notes, I should say. Good, happy with that. And then the final low E thing. Again, it's always good to just recalibrate between each one. Because I calibrate to the far side of the string I'm working on, I can't really do that on the top E because it will fall off. I can't put the little blocks there. So I have to do that to the far side of the B, which means I use basically the same calibration for E and B, top E and B. But it's just the sort of way it has to be, really. There's no way around that. It seems to work pretty well. They may be fractionally different. Most of the time the calibration doesn't change much, but occasionally it does. It's quite common for there to be a difference from one side of the neck radius to the other. So it's not unusual. You might not think it would be something that happens, but it does. As to what that actually means for the true shape of the neck, don't ask me. Again, all better at the top end, a little bit more, tiny bit of sizzle, I call it, down this end, a bit of zizzing, which is like halfway to being fret slap, but you know, it doesn't hurt to just again put a little bit more energy, focus into ensuring this is leveled out, because that will give us the cleanest sounding notes possible. Okay. Now I've got some people who, well, quite a lot of people I suppose around the world who use this technique, and nicely in tune. Beautiful. Yeah, lots of people, quite a few people use this technique, and it's there's only so much you can write about it as far as instructions go in words, but an awful lot of working this technique depends on experience, or building up a body of experience, so you can know what, some of what I've learned over the years. Now, I was hoping sometime soon to kind of update, or not update as such, write an appendage, no, addendum, or a bolt-on additional ebook to really cover a number of things. Adjustable Tusq nuts for a start, but then the increased level of depth of technique in using this banana truss rod business, because it's taken me 8 years to work out how it does what it does. Right, off you come. Yeah, it's taken me 8 years to figure it out, and there is actually an awful lot of learning and development that's taken place in that time. And of course, it's hard to describe it in words. So one of the things I really enjoyed being able to do is to have one-on-one time, or even small group time with people, so we can get hands-on practice. That's the important bit. Things really make sense when you've got them in front of you and things aren't working out. And one of the things I can never, even when I talk to people on the phone, it's very difficult to ask them or query them about the condition of the. Do you know what? I've done this again. Right, I've got two things to do. I bought the bloody Chrome bridge, haven't I? And this is nickel. All right, well, that's fine. I'll keep us a spare. Thankfully, I've got to go and buy something else as well. So I shall disappear, and we'll finish it another time. Anyway, so yeah, so it'd be great to run a sort of small group class thing, whatever you might call it, I don't know, masterclass, of how to get further into using this technique, because it sounds, to me in some ways, it sounds really kind of self-explanatory, because I know that it's really simple, and yet actually, of course, it isn't. It's quite mysterious and a bit confusing when you first start doing it, and it also comes with a lot of stress, because people naturally they haven't got the experience to know whether they've taken off too much material or too little, and as soon as you get nervous, you can make mistakes, and also people can. I think one of the things that people can tend to do is to give up early on the leveling process, and then find that they haven't got the result they want, and then kind of lose confidence in the fact that this works. So the question of how much do you take has got to be a thing that we don't have a way of measuring it. It's got to come with experience. In a similar way that experience will, with experience you're able to look at a fretboard and say, this isn't really going to go well with the fret leveling, so we have to reconsider. If you want to keep the guitar for years and it's special, consider refretting it to get the advantage of all the setup, or accept that we can't get the low action you want without taking the frets to a lower place than I would particularly want to go. So when you're doing the recrowning like this, you tend to find that you spend more, you do spend more time working on the frets that got hit most in the leveling process. So in this case, none of them are too bad. I'm not kind of having to spend too long in any one of them, but you will, on any neck, you will perceive, you'll get a definite sense of the difference with some of them that you're hardly touching at all. Now, if you remember, I said that 13th fret was low. The low frets tend to, you tend to just literally whiz over the top and they're done. So this should be hardly anything. There's a little bit on the far edge and that's it. But there's a bit of wear up here, so somebody's been happy playing merrily up at the top end. But then we would expect the following ones to, as is showing up now, to take a bit more work, because in trying to bottom out these low ones, we take a bit more from the ones all around. So that's why this one here is showing up as having taken a bit of hitting, but it's the only way you can bring these back into play. So, and I guess that's the price of either poor fretting or slightly not casual. You know what I mean? A little bit varied fretting quality. But having said that, it's not right to be too critical, because putting frets in is hugely unscientific. Full stop. There is no. I don't get a perfect set of frets. Maybe 1 in 25 or 30 times. It's nigh on impossible. Just doesn't happen, because it's all mechanical and it's made of wood. You're hammering or pressing slightly crudely made metal things into a kind of inconsistent wooden material. So it sits where it wants at the end of the day, and you think you're doing it consistently and evenly, when in fact it's doing what it wants. Now I do have a nickel bridge in there, but it's got the wrong bridge fittings on it. It's for the vintage style thin pins, if you know what I mean. So it doesn't convert easily. So I'm just cleaning the marker pen at this point in time, and also picking up a lot of dirt and dust off the fretboard. Not because we're going to need to clean it again once I've sanded out and polished the frets, but doing this gets rid of the marker pen for a start, which can sometimes get left behind. So that gets rid of that, and it also takes some of the oils out the fretboard, which means that it's easier to attach masking tape for protecting the fingerboard when it's time to it's time to polish the frets, which is not long from now. Okay, so when it comes to it, we will replace this bridge here with the correct roller bridge, not a chrome one. They were in short supply and I was finding it pretty difficult. I mean, it could live with chrome, but we're not in a rush, so we'll go for the correct colour, and we'll save this for the next chrome one that comes in. Okay, so the next part of this is to polish out the frets, and there goes my tape. I've got, is this the low tack? Yeah, I've got low tack, that stuff, masking tape. That doesn't even feel like low tack masking tape, but they sold it to me as that. Oh well, there's never a problem with these Epiphones anyway. That's really funny that they call that low tack, and I would say it's about the same as that. Yeah, almost identical. And I paid more than I used to pay my guy in the market, who's gone out of business. So Paul, if you ever watch this, missing you down at the market, because can't get reliable low tack masking tape. And this stuff I bought from Shields. I don't think it's very low tack. It's quite sticky. In fact, it's pretty sticky. Anyway, the main problem, the only risk with the tackiness of the masking tape is when you're working with flaky, insecure, old finishes, which, you know, if they're really badly adhered, the masking tape can pull them off. It's more a problem of the finishing process than it is, because you have to use these masking tapes to protect the board at some point. And if it's determined, you know, if the finish is so weak, then you really don't stand any hope of it staying on. It's gonna come off at the first hint of any kind of protective tape. In fact, it will come off if you kind of speak to it funny and look at it in the wrong sort of way. Anyway, I'm just stretching this out to cover this one, and then we're on to having to cut the tape up into lots of bits, which I shall do now. I think it's time to... It's actually time for a new board of sorts, but I could really do with something much harder, like a piece of glass or something. That might be good. I've got a big piece of glass over there, but it's for a tabletop and it's toughened glass, and if I tried to do anything with it, it would explode. I don't want to use the whole thing because it's massive. So anyway, so I'll keep on using this IKEA furniture left over. But yeah, well, you could do that other stuff. What's it called? Ply. And plywood, you'd be pulling up layers of plywood just as much. This white plastic coated stuff lasts a bit longer, I think. Anyway, so yeah, that's a bummer when I could really least do with having to buy more parts. Thought I'd got everything I needed, but no, it's time to go shopping again. But on a plus side, as I say, I've got a few days grace and I can shift around things. I sent off 3 guitars today, 2 to Colin and 1 to Ralph. So it felt good to get some work out of the door. Packing 3 guitars yesterday was quite a big deal. In fact, funnily enough, I used up every single dreg of my packaging material. So all of my bubble wrap was finished last night to the last, just scraped through with enough. Most of my cardboard. So I've got more bubble wrap on order. I've got more of the reinforced tape on order, which isn't cheap. It's about 30 quid for 6 big rolls or something like that. But if I use it carefully, I probably get I can be careful in the use of it. It's very good for kind of final go rounds on packages to make sure everything stays together. It adds an extra bit of strength, but it's all bleeding expensive, to tell you the truth. So, but that's on its way, and I've got 3 rolls of, oops, that's a bit wobbly, 3 rolls of large scale 750 mils by 30 meters. They don't seem to sell it in 50 meters that I can get hold of. Bubble wrap, big industrial, large size babbles. Anyhow, so that's on its way, but again, it's been a bit of a funny week with the previous postal strike. So everything's kind of disappeared. I've got various things coming, like more sandpaper but it's all consumable stuff. Nothing exciting. So I'm just sort of feeling at the moment I'll just scrape through. I've got a couple of builds on the go, which actually probably about 3 now on the go, which I haven't really charged the majority of. On the one of them I've charged only so far for the parts. Then there's the kind of whole labour charge afterwards, or the making part, and the other ones I haven't charged for anything yet. So in early days, but they also need parts as a start, followed by a labour. So that's a bit delayed. So more regular setups needed just now. Okay, So onwards and upwards. We had such an odd kerfuffle with our fridge the other day. It was so weird. I was talking on one of the videos about, it was on Her Majesty's day of Her Majesty's passing, I think, that I was talking about it because it coincided. But yeah, we were scrabbling around to find the instant 500 quid required to replace the fridge freezer. And of course, the first thing that happened is we just thought, that's it, we've lost the freezer of food, which is a pain. And of course, on a bit of checking, it turned out that we found out that the insurance would cover the lost freezer food, but the excess was more than probably the value of the food in the freezer, so it wasn't worth. I would have to make it worthwhile. We'd have to lie and put more in the freezer, in the imaginary freezer, than was actually there. So we weren't going to do that. So we lost some stuff, but we were kind of still getting ready to, what do we do? Do we order this one? Do we do a bit more research? Do we just grab one? And I think the smart move was to accept that there's no point rushing, because the freezer's worth of food we could write off. That was pretty much gone. So it was a bit of a slowdown. And then, if at worst we'd have to live without a fridge for a few days until we got something else. So in the sort of quiet of the stillness of the morning after the night before, I did a bit of research, and I actually got onto a place where there was a good question and answer, and it wasn't about the exact model, but the guy said, no, what happened? I'll tell you what happened. What actually happened. Overnight, the freezer didn't seem to, it seemed like, what happened? Let me just think. Nothing happened overnight. I think the food was starting to warm up in the fridge. I think the freezer was beginning to think about defrosting further, so we got a bit of water out from underneath. But then at some point, what did I do? I pulled the freezer out and sort of had it standing outside, and I cleaned up the kind of pipes and the heat exchanger stuff at the back as much as possible. And then after a while, I was pretty certain that I felt it starting to make vibrations, and working. And so I was in that place of, okay, look, this might be working for some unknown reason. And amazingly, it started to seem to cool down the fridge part of things again. So I sort of thought, right, I'm going to leave it carry on do that, and it carried on doing it, and then quite noisily made this noise that we remembered we'd heard it make the day before, 48 hours, whenever it was, when it started to warm up previously. So I thought, okay, whatever's happening, this is happening a second time. So something tells me this thing has got to a point where it's given up and made this noise. It's given up cooling, and then a period of time of maybe defrosting has happened. Then it appears to have started working again, and then it's after appearing to work for a while, it's then kind of made this loud clanking noise and sort of shuddered to a halt and stopped cooling I suppose. But that was really useful because it made me think, hang on, it's in a kind of cycle here, something's going on and it's just switching itself off. And then I did a bit of quick looking around online, and I found, by chance, somebody's description of their problem, which seemed perfect, and it said, or there was a solution actually, and the guy said, take off your, open the freezer. And he said, what's happening is your fan and the air intakes are getting iced up, which is why it said something like the freezer isn't fully defrosting, but your fridge, first thing you notice, your fridge warms up. I'm thinking, yeah, that's it. That's seems what's happening. So he said, open your freezer, clear out all the stuff. So I did, and it said then take off this big panel at the back, and it wasn't the exact same freezer, but the principle was the same. So I took off this big panel, and of course behind it, first thing I could see was this wall of ice and this fan kind of intakes, or the fan itself was just iced up. So I realized that it had stopped, and in the period of time that it had stopped, it then had managed to thaw a little bit to clear itself of the ice, which had then resulted in it starting up again, where it appeared to work for a little bit, and then of course it had created some more ice and then given up again. And so it made a lot of sense, and I thought, right, we're on a winner. So I took all the sort of carefully, gently took all the ice out of this monster, and then we literally defrosted the entire freezer in a record time, actually, with the help of a hairdryer, carefully used hairdryer. And all that time I'd put the stuff that seemed to be pretty well frozen still, I'd put it up in the fridge to even if we were going to throw it away, I was going to use it, certainly going to use it to cool the contents of the fridge, so we might at least keep some of that. Anyway, so that seemed to work, and it was amazing how quick I managed to defrost the freezer and get that bit sorted out, which meant that by that time I was able to close the door, the freezer door, clean up all the trays and whatever, make sure everything was nice, and put them back in, press the start button, and of course immediately it started working, cooled the fridge part and started to freeze quite quickly, and within an hour or so it was evident that it was working again. So I was absolutely chuffed because we suddenly saved 500 quid that we really didn't have spare, which was amazing. And I just marvelled at how quickly I was ready to give up on it. I assumed I wouldn't be able to figure it out, whatever it was. And actually, I don't know why the whole idea of defrosting it didn't come to my mind first of all. I think partly because it was supposed to be a frost-free thing, but the bit I sort of overlooked was that it was 10 years old at least, or about 10 years old. So I kind of got into that fatalistic thing where you say, well, I don't care, it's had it. There's no point calling out somebody to pay 100 quid for them to say, oh, well, it's had it, you need to get a new one, or 200 quid repair or something. So I got into that fatalistic sort of state of mind about it, which was a bit silly, because as it turns out it was pretty simple. But it was the fact that it started again and then stopped with a kind of clanky noise, which really was useful to say this thing can't be completely broken. It hasn't just catastrophically died. It's temporarily stopping, and that got me looking at it in a different light. So anyway, after all of that, so I was able to buy the things I needed, the supplies and bubble wraps and stuff. Long story, but yeah, that's how it works really. So I've also got, what have I got? I've got to go on a cardboard run, because there's the one thing I won't buy. I'm not going to, when there's so much cardboard in the world, I'm never going to buy cardboard to send guitars. Go to the Halfords, and there's a million over the year. There's tons of full-size cardboard boxes being thrown away. So I go and get those, which are brilliant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the camera off, because I'm going to do, all I'm going to do, inverted commas right now, is sand and polish this out. And then once that's done, I'm going to have to park it until we get the correct bridge and the correct that other thing. Switchcraft switch. a nice, lovely, expensive Switchcraft switch that I can't use for love nor money. Now, the first thing I'm going to make sure is I've got the right. That's going to make it totally useless if I'm not careful. I have to have the right thing. That goes on there. That's correct. I presume then this one goes on there. This one probably will work if the soldering is done a bit better, but you know, the agreement was that John wanted a new one to be fully confident in it. While this one appears to be in good condition, I'm going to honour the agreement to go and get the Switchcraft as planned. So there we are. Okay, so I guess we'll come back when it's time to do the electrics on this later in the week, and yeah, take it from there. Put all these things together and park it. So I'll see you later on. Thanks for listening to my rambling. I've disconnected my tweeters. It might be really annoying actually, but it gives me the sound of a faraway party somewhere over there. Poor old speakers, they're about 40 years old now. They're still performing, but it gives me a little something in the background. So you'd never, well, let's see if the copyright monsters manage to recognize this sort of bass line. But anyway, so I'm just going to finish the wiring with the new switch. One of the things I want to point out with this, and I know people have pointed this out before, these contacts have been used before, right? This is not a new switch. I hate to say this, it's really annoying. This not a new switch. It's a Switchcraft, but all of these have been tinned before and used. They're all rough and scuffed. I don't know whether this deserves a close-up with my dancehall reggae thing going on in the background. See that? Now you could say, oh, that's been pre-tinned, aren't we kind? But I would say, you and I might say, wait a minute, I squeezed those together, by the way. But you know, that's been soldered before. Maybe it's pre-tinned, eh? Maybe that's what they do for you, special touch. I don't know, but maybe normal people, if you know any, let me know. But normal people, you might sort of look at that and go, wait a minute, that's not new. It doesn't look massively new. So, oh, a little bass going in the background there. Let's see if we've got heat going to the device. Okay, so with my nearly new thing. Oh, by the way, I have a spare bridge. So that's the the nickel bridge. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just take it off there for a minute, put it over there. Yeah, so I got, it's just nice having this bass in the background because it makes me feel like I'm not alone. I don't know why I've been going down a reggae, what would the word be? Memory lane-y thing. Now, these here thingies, I haven't got really any way to safeguard isolate with the sheath, the earth from everything else. And it's a bit of annoyance because, I suppose it's because I didn't set this up, somebody else has done it and wired it up in front, I'm in the factory, so I don't get a chance. If I was going to do it, I would like a heat shrink running up to there so that I don't have to ever worry about those hot input lugs ever getting anywhere near to the ground, the sort of common ground bit that's going on here. So I can't reach there, so if I'm going to get these hooked up, I'm going to first of all separate out this loose one or two, because those little devils there are potentially free agents which could cause a short out if they were feeling like it. Difficult to make the earth wires do what you want sometimes because they kind of go off and they're all a bit messy, but I'm just sort of trying to clear them out as much as possible so they're everything's in one place and no stray things. Right. So these Switchcraft things are a bit odd shaped in that they are, well, they are oblong shaped holes. Is that the right word for it? Could be. So this thing here, I mean, I could extend it, right? And then I could put a heat shrink on. As it is, if I do it this way, I have to get right up close, which brings these little bare wires distressingly close. So we could do a little tiny short extension. I mean, you know, a minimal extension if I could remember where me bits and pieces have gone. I've just done a huge tidy up. Well, you wouldn't believe it. It's not that impressive, but I've done a bit of a tidy up because basically yesterday and the day before I was doing mostly I was doing ultra wide 6-string routing and stuff, so it was a pretty messy thing, so sawdust everywhere, which is really enjoyable. God, can you hear my it probably really annoy you, I'm sorry. I'm just putting it on because I like having just a bit of something, like there's something going on in the world, rather than just being in a sort of just the sound of my own voice. You wouldn't be annoyed if it was a party you were at. You just enjoy it. You'd get on with it. And anyway, so I'm going to cut this in half here. I suppose the idea would be to give me a little bit of an extension in here, which I can then mostly cover off with a bit of this heat shrink, and then that will let me isolate it a bit more safely. Now, getting all of this to soften up is going to be a bit of a fun game. What heat have we got on here? Come on. Now that sort of looks like it's on, but how well is your guess is as good as mine. So resist the urge to blow on the solder joint. Problem is, if you put the shrink tubing on too quick, you'll end up with the shrink tubing getting in the way of everything. Getting stuck on itself, basically, because it will heat up before you want it to, and then thin out. So hoist that out of the way, give it a bit of a shrink. Okay, so that's my ground wire, which, listen to that bass. Those people having a party down the street. Well, they're having such a good time. So that gives me some room there, you see. And I could even, if I was feeling fruity with my new multi-pack box of tubes, I could get me a bit of this here blue. I mean, this is really going overboard, eh? Cut me a piece of this off. I know, you're going to say, for God's sakes, why did you put that on? Well, just for fun. So now I can put that in there like so. I could get me wrong way. Get me grabbing hands. Excuse me, matron. Get me grabbing hands at work. You won't do this without holding it down too hard. Yeah, this is like some old, roots reggae. People do this thing where they have an old reel-to-reel mix of something that comes from the early 70s or mid-70s, which this one does, which I rather like. Okay, so there's me. That's quite nice, actually. I like that, sort of safely away from everything bad. There's me output, if you recall. IIRC, if we recall correctly. Let's get that hooked up. And then we've got to figure out which is, just to double check which is which hot lead going into the switch. Oh, I forgot my little, it's probably just as well that I left it late, my little joby, possibly, oh no, that's about right, look at that. A little blast of the heat, not much, I don't want to make it totally stiff, certainly around, not the back end. If it's got a bend, that's good that that's less stiffened, if you follow me meaning. I could have covered that off, but there's nothing in the way of it. So, we are going, what are we going? Output, inputs. Right, we're going, get my head around this the right way. What are we doing? We're going up here, and that is neck pickup. It's going to be there. Okay, neck pickup, which was the red one. Ooh. There's not much of it, I have to say, so come on round here, red. Come on, red. The white is a bit fizzly. Come on, separate out, please. Thank you. Let's just get this. There we go. So we're going to change the jack socket as well in a minute. That's me. Have I just done this? No, that's me bridge one. Yeah, get it right. Got it right. I mean. So I was just watching the TV today, watching the an incredible sight of people queuing for like 8 hours or more to pay their respects to Her Majesty the Queen, the late Queen, and it's quite something. And you know, I said before, I'm not a Republican. No, I'm not a royalist. Let's just double check this. Comment, right, output. That's going to the neck. That's going to the bridge. There we are. Yeah, I'm not a royalist. I'm not an anarchist or particularly a Republican. And while I just don't, intellectually, I don't think the institution of a monarchy is a fantastically relevant idea for the 21st century. But having said that, now this is where it gets a little bit difficult. Having said that, I get it that it's meaningful for people to pay tribute to their Queen. Now, the problem I've got here is that all of the wires of this device get right in the way of this switch, and they absolutely don't want to let me turn it round into the correct position. It means that the wires end up crushing against the circuit board, which itself is a pretty lousy position. So I'm not actually sure that I can turn it that way. I can actually do it. The only way I can actually do it is the opposite way. That means I have to reverse the. Right, I've got to do what I can do. That means I've got to reverse the switch position, the positions, because they're going to be upside down now. Bloody hell! So the only way it can fit is that way round, and that means that if we're going to here, up is going to be the bridge, and the opposite way round. So here we go. Let's unhook these darn things. Now it's getting so that I feel like adjusting these wires now, because they starting to feel really kind of, I know they're not too bad, but not far off being almost too short to do anything with. So let's turn that around. Let's drag that through here, which will work because it's a bit longer. Let's put this devil through here. Now the problem is, this is where I could really use my old pin ends, but they won't reach far enough probably. problem with this is I can't really add more to that without it coming apart again. Yes, anyway, I, regardless of my sort of take on the monarchy thing, I could really see how emotionally meaningful it was for a lot of the people that were queuing to walk past the coffin, and you know, without a doubt, it was obviously a big thing. And I'm not so cynical that if I had been there myself, I'm no doubt that I would be moved by it. And I think that partly that has to do with almost any opportunity for reflection, I guess. You know, when you sort of stop and give it time, think what the Queen meant to, not so much meant to us, but, you know, our lives that have gone along with it. Okay, so that's now the workable way round. So this can go back in there, come back up through here. Up, down. It's funny that these things don't seem to have a washer anymore. It's not strictly necessary. Whoa, that's good. But they don't. They don't come with a washer. This one seems sort of reluctant to do up at all. Oh, don't tell me, please. Come on. This came with it. This cannot be possible. Not only has it been used, I'm now discovering that it doesn't want to do up on this thread. That is not good, Switchcraft. Now that's put me in a tricky position. Why can't you depend on components? Seriously. So now, amongst all of this, I'm going to have to try and hold this in place and undo this. Bring it out and figure out why this damn thing is not working. And that's another in and out that I could have done without Switchcraft. Do you understand? So look at this. That is definitely does not want to go on all the way. That came with this. Thanks a million. Right, I'm going to have to try and steal one from a different piece. And if that doesn't work, I am really cheesed off. That's a different thread. Brilliant. Surprise, surprise. Let's try the Switchcraft one off this longer switch. I'm going to be... There you go. That one works. Look at that. That one doesn't. And I bet you it doesn't work on this one either. I should get my money back on this. This is an absolute joke. That doesn't fit. It's the wrong switch, and that's what Switchcraft have sent me. Who is it that sent it to me? Let's get the box bag. Boston. Switchcraft toggle switch. No cap, nickel, no working thing. Now the problem is I've just wired it, okay, and now I'm now left with an unusable one of these. This is the one that came with it, and it's the wrong thing. All I can do is send it back to them, complain. I'll take a still with this. I'm absolutely not taking apart this again and then wasting all my time. So look, there's your packaging. Let's get a better shot of that. Packaging, Boston. There is the one that comes that doesn't fit. There is a spare one that I've taken off there. That Switchcraft I've put onto there. This one does not fit. Wrong. And I'm going to write the word will not do up. Will not do up. that's threatening me 26 quid unless they send me another one, another washer. Thankfully, I've got one that I can get the job done with, but that's just not good enough. You get ripped off by people supposedly knowing what they're selling. Blast and damnation. Right, that is going back. I'm not getting stuffed around like that. Right. So I've got the thing finally. I can do it up and we can get this thing on the road. You don't even get a tip with it for your 26 quid or so. Only some stupid sum of money this cost. I got the wrong and malfunctioning washer and no tip. What a bargain. Honestly. 26 quid, not a tip, because you're getting a Switchcraft. Switchcraft, it's the most important thing in the world. Oh, Jesus. Thank you. I've got zero reach. Zero reach. How cool is that? There's no place I can put it on whilst holding it and get it done up. Oh, that's right, I'll do it left-handed. No, it's turning now. See, that's turning. I don't want it to turn. Verdamped. Christ almighty. Does anyone ever say how much they love doing semi-acoustic guitars when it comes to wiring? Up and down. Right, I've got to somehow do this up whilst keeping that in place with practically no reach whatsoever. As good as I can get, I'm afraid. Blimey. What's his name? Tony Hancock. Hancock's half hour would say. Right, so while I'm here, let's undo the jack socket. Not something you can see for a minute. This looks like it's got a reasonably good quality one on, but we've gone for Switchcraft in both cases, so let's refit it. Occasionally, the annoying thing is all good intentions to upgrade things, but what you sometimes find is that little tiny details like your quality, your quality jack socket is a fraction bigger, and the tunnel or the hole that this was made for this guitar can be fractionally too small. Okay, thank you. Yeah, and you can suddenly find yourself with the lugs touching the side and stuff like that, which can be a major distraction because it can short out, but it also sometimes just doesn't let you put the socket back in, and or plug occasionally it obstructs the tip when you plug the guitar in, and you can't actually plug the socket jack plug in is what I'm trying to say. Right, so, and sometimes what's handy to do is, just to remind me, is just mark which way is up. This seems kind of jolly obvious. Now, what I'm getting a feeling right away here is that this has got no... See this? It doesn't want to come out. Now, is that because there's no spare wire and it's all tied up and put away? And I think it actually is. And I've got no reach through to here. Which is why I don't like these things. So the last thing I want to do is undo this So yeah, that's quite a long wire from the switch. Where's the switch go? Switch goes out to that cable there. So yeah, let's make it so you can't replace the socket. In fact, you can't even get the socket out. Can't get the plate off. Wow, that is something else. Do you know what? This is, I might be even tempted. To take apart the whole of this wiring loom to get at something that isn't actually broken is a foolish thing to do. So I am going to replace these. I'm going to test the guitar at home, and so long as the switch works perfectly well and there's no issues at all with this jack, which I don't think there are, it looks good quality to me, but we're going to change it for a Switchcraft. I'm just going to go with the if it ain't broke, don't fix it, because what they've probably done in here is that they've put the, I suspect they've put the jack in first, wired up the jack first, put it in, and then pulled everything through, and then to put cable ties on everything. And I have a feeling that to get this, to actually change this, we would have to completely dismantle the entire wiring loom, which I think would be a crazy thing to do. But also really annoying and bad choice of construction if you know, if anybody did need to replace it, because this thing isn't coming out. And I don't know whether it could be that they've caught the you know, the side, sometimes the side of the lugs catch the tunnel if it's too narrow. It could be that, but I don't want to pull it hard in case it isn't, because then that's just, you know, it's just ridiculous. It's going to fall apart. So I really don't know, but I'm going to take, what's the word? Take a sensible way out here. That feels fine. It doesn't feel like there's any issues at all. Let's just test quickly that the switch is doing what I want it to do. No surprises before we clean everything up. I can never find, this is the worst designed amp in the world. It's a great little amp, but you cannot find the what's going on here. Gain is actually back to front. You kidding me? How did that happen? That is insane. Did you see me change that round, or did I forget to do it? How can I get something that 50%ly wrong? Just bear with me, please, while I pull my hairs out. You have to get a new one of these every once in a while, because they what do? They round off eventually. They lose their bite. So basically, turn that round, and I turned round what I thought was the thing the right way round, and yet somehow that's come on. That's actually back to front. And let's see why I'm so wrong about this. So according to that, that's down. That should be neck. Do you know what? I'm losing my marbles. Which way around was it? Okay, that's the way around it was. Get off. That is currently running the neck. That's either that, or I've got the, that should be running bridge. That's open. That's that one. So I've actually got, that's what I've done wrong, is I put the damn, oh, do you know what I've done? I've used an old, I've referred to a guitar I did the other day where red was neck, white was bridge, and in this case I've taken it for granted that's the case, and I've reproduced it, and it's the opposite way around. Well, at least I've not gone totally insane. There's an explanation. I looked at the wrong thing. I took my cue from the wrong thing. Holy cactuses. Right, we'll go backwards again, if we may. Would you be so kind as to hold that? Thank you very much. It's funny having that music coming from afar away. So this now is coming off here, and it's going to be replaced by my little friend, the white wire. This is a bit, it does feel like living above a venue or something and getting this great beat of the music coming through. Now this, I'm never going to get to reach it at this rate, because I can't reach that with my bare hands. Let's try it this way around. Yes, I could just pretend to anyone who comes on this video that there's nothing wrong with the sound. I've just moved to a new workshop above a club. I've moved above some students. Oh, some students have moved in upstairs. That's the answer. Right, let's try this again. God, getting a grip on anything is very peskily annoying. It's quite good that my old Sony speaker is thumping away like it's 1984 whenever I bought it. Thanks. Actually I bought it in about 87 or 88, so it's partying like it's 1978. Oh, God. How is it so difficult to find the power? Right, what do we reckon we're in? Neck, yes. Oh, fantastic. Yes. Terrific. Right, let us finally get this put back on, and that part of the show on the road. So many things to go wrong, like again a faulty screw that won't do up, which ain't no good to nobody. Like literally, I've got no know where to grip this and turn at the same time. It's just quite crazy, really. I'm trying to hold it in place with the side of my finger, but it's still going to want to move. Now it's just about exactly vertical, but can't for the life of me get it done up anymore. Yeah, so one of the millions of reasons that these guitars, semi-hollow or hollow body, whatever you call them, semi-acoustic, are a nightmare. You know, and I sometimes feel bad when I make a comment about it and somebody says, "Oh, do you fancy rewiring my Epiphone, whatever?" And I go, "Oh God, censorship!" But you know, the words I long not to hear, and then I feel guilty because it's a job and it's not somebody else's fault that their guitar is hard to set up or hard to rewire. But the truth is, it is, and it can be even harder. As you can see, this has been a load of difficult little things along the way. None of them you could really predict. So anyway, having done the leveling, fret leveling and everything previously, I'm now going to give it another dust down because it got fairly mucky or dusty in the workshop. It's definitely not a dust-free space, so just give it a good clean over. Yeah, it's I say it feels bad to sort of wince when somebody wants you to do something, but it's a right royal booger. So anyway, that is finally done, but not helped at all by Switchcraft in two ways. The first one is that it didn't say on their switch, it didn't say this one has a shorter, or it didn't even give a length of the threaded part. So I bought a switch that wouldn't work. You could say with more experience, I should have known that it wouldn't work. But you know, some data about the length of the threaded part would help that process. Anyhow, didn't get that, so we were working blind. Now I have to try and find one of these tips to fit the Switchcraft thing, and that one's okay. It's from the original, from the other Switchcraft. So there we have it. Hurrah! Definitely that's going back. Anyway, so having finally got that bit done, then the annoyance of choosing to leave the socket alone, because that's, unless it's broken and there's a real reason for going and doing it, that I've no idea where that would lead me. And pulling this thing out with its little printed circuit boards, which are all a little bit under stress anyway, it's not even a straightforward wiring setup on this Epiphone. It's a I don't know whether it's some modern innovation or whatever, or whether it came. I guess this one doesn't say it's a Pro model, the 339 Pro, but maybe it is. I don't know. It's got the switches, but it doesn't have it written on the thingy. It just has 339 written on it. Anyhow, the point being is, it'll be an absolute pain to pull it all apart to try and fix something that isn't broken. So that's a chrome one. We don't want that. That's that with a dodgy thing. Don't want that either. Right, 2 of those, 3 of those. So got to now find, where's the final, there it is, the 3 little things. Now remember, previously on the last episode of doing this guitar, the what am I going to do? This is filthy. On the last time we saw this, I tried to put some relief in the neck and it didn't really go with any because it was stiff. I think it had had its day as far as neck relief was concerned. So we've got no way around that. It is as it is. We've got these two screws here, which we'll put the plate back on. And then we'll go down to the nut end to fix, time to glue the nut in place. So all the leveling's done, all that precision-y bit is done, so don't have to worry. It'll just be a case now of stringing up. He said with a kind of glib confidence, it'll be just a case of putting strings on and away we go. There will be no further tricks or issues. You can bet your life that's the case. He said, almost kind of like praying to himself. Right, let's come down this end. Let's move those things out of the way for a minute. That's spare to go in there. No idea what's playing. I bet the Google algorithm, if the Google algorithm gets hold of this and decides it's copyright infringement, I will be amazed. Okay, so let us first of all get this nut stuck in place. It was all nicely done when we leveled the frets, so it just needs a little bit of glue to hold it in place. So, and then I just want to make sure it goes dead center, which it does, and then press it firmly in place. And then, while I'm at it, let's put these three little truss rod cover screws. And the reason I'm putting these on now, because we've already tried to change or add any more relief in, and we've got as much as we can get. Sorry, we've tried to take out the last little bit of relief or flatten it a little bit more, and there was no further adjustment we could make, so that was just about that. Okay, so on with the bridge down at this end. Now let's get the strings. That's a G, so there's a kind of interesting mixture of strings that John supplied me with here, so let me just make sure I get them right. That will be the low E. That will be the low E. This one, next one will be the A, and so on and so forth. Now what I haven't checked is the height. I put all this paper here. It's a good idea. I've got all this. I've got a new grade of wet and dry paper, but it's right where I stand, and the gritty edge is catching against my clothes every time, and that's probably better. Back to front. Yes, in May, if I remember, the previous bridge just about only just got to the height I wanted, the action I wanted. So it may be that this one may be a fraction too high. Usually okay, but let's check. So with the adjustable Tusq nut, what I like to do is put the middle two strings on, the D and the G first, to hold the nut in place. So I come up to this end, pull it through straight, tight, and then pull back a fret, and I start winding, holding on to this tightly, direct that over the top of the loose bit, and as it comes round, push up the loose bit and direct the held string, keeping it all taut with my other fingers, keeping it below, and that then kind of locks itself off. So we've got the D on. Now we've got a G here, which is this, bought individually, £1.50 for a new string. Wow. Really? Yeah, I guess. This is the G, I believe. The missing G. I think it's a particular gauge that John has on this. Right, so we'll put the G through as well. And then pull back, hold down, because the left-handed way round now. I was going to check what I could see, but it's probably all right. Pull up, hold on tight. So the secret is keeping the held part of the string tight all the time, so that it doesn't come out of the saddle, it doesn't, you know, fall back out of the stop bar anchor. So we, you know, we've got it under control the whole time. Okay, so those are the ones that hold this down. Just having a look at this now, we could probably drop the action a fraction. That's it, down you go. Dropped in with a clunk. Okay, we'll reset it again once I've got the strings on. You can hear that's missing the saddle. It's not difficult because the saddle's always the string usually rarely sits on the saddle and stays there while you're threading it at this end. So it's always a good thing to just check it before you tighten up. Back one, then it falls off the saddle usually. Hold on tight. Over the loose one, come round, pull the loose one up, hold one under the loose one, and we're still on the saddle. But then it goes round and you can't access it to cut it short, so you have to cut it while it's slackish and then send it round again. Right, and the final two, which are in sequence, it's the B and the E. Now on the last guitar I did, I managed to break two strings, the low E and the high E, and that was painful enough because it cost me another set of strings to pull the next ones out of. So I'm going to be very careful, but I think the reason that broke is the reason why I don't actually like locking tuners. So it was the fact that the locking tuners had crimped the strings in the process of holding them in place and weakened them, and so that they broke as soon as I stretched them, which is, to me, just tells me, and once again, why I don't, or reminds me why I don't like locking tuners at all. And I've got them on one of my guitars, and I was sort of suckered in, I think, by the idea of it, and since I've gone off them altogether. And if I did it again, I certainly wouldn't put them on there. They don't add anything to the tuning stability that the nut and stretching of strings doesn't already take care of. So it's a fix without a problem, as far as I'm concerned. And in fact, worse than that, it's a new problem. So it's a new problem without a problem, if you get what I mean. Right. I promise you I won't run the bassy boom music again ever, but I just thought I'd do it for this time round, just to see, for fun, for my amusement. It feels like I'm out somewhere busy on a Saturday night out or something. Right, so the first question I've got is, does this new bridge, does it get me to the action I want? Because it's all very well doing a setup with the original bridge, but the roller bridges can sometimes be a different thickness, so they add a bit more material and what was perfect first fret action, perfect last fret action before, suddenly becomes a bit too tall. But there's a little bit of adjustment room, so that's good. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's good. I can live with that. No need to take it off and grind the bottom down. Ooh. Now that one. Okay, that's sitting on the first fret, which is good. It's how I want it to be, really. Except one end is sitting on it and the other end is, oh, it's high up because I haven't tightened the strings up yet. Right, let's just hold on to that for a second. So to go back and check here, so we're a bit tall over there. We'll bring that down, the last of its adjustment. That's kind of what happened with the original bridge. We hit the 1.5 right on the stops, which is where we're at. So then I conclude that they're identical size bridge, which is good. That's good. That's where I want it to be. Finally. Okay. Righty-ho. So that is finally going in its bag, and I'm going to tidy up the remains of this battle that I've had with this creature. Yes. Like I say, I will take it home and play it. And make sure that everything works. There's no issues with the jack socket, and providing that's good, because the last thing I want to have to do is to pull that entire wiring loom apart, because I can't even get in to see where they've put the clips on it. So that would be a real unpleasant thing. Now these people are going to say, oh, you've got to send me back the parts. And I'll say, well, I had to use them because I've got a customer that I've had to send this or get this guitar back to. So we shall see. We'll see whether they're going to give me a hard time. Okay, so what I also want to do with this is just give the strings a stretch. So next on my list of things, I've got 2 Harley Benton guitars in the house for Tim from Florida. And Tim is a dentist in the US, and he's contacted me and asked could I do him some setups and send them on, direct from Thomann, and then send them on. And I said to him I'd love to, and I used to very much enjoy doing that until 2 things happened. One is Brexit, and that doesn't really affect the American business. But around the same time, the American courier costs went sky high. Yeah, the costs went sky high, and so it just became completely impossible, really, to... that's the one that came out. Yeah, it became impossible to send stuff, uneconomical, really. Anyway, there are the pieces that came off here. Not that they're really worth keeping or doing anything with, but I will put them in a little baggie for the sake of it. Yeah, so I dissuaded him really and said, you know, much as I'd love to, it just doesn't really make sense. At which point he said, well, my wife and I might be coming across on the QE2 or something in October. Perhaps we'll come down and meet you and pick them up from you on our trip. To which I replied, well, yeah, why not? As you do, sort of thing. So anyway, so happens that they're coming over in a couple of weeks' time. So I've got these two Harley Bentons. Actually, both of them are very good condition, surprisingly good condition. So that's nice too. They clearly upped their game, Harley Benton. The Fusion is, I would say, almost, apart from the fact that I would change the nut just for that last little bit of Tusq additional perfection. Otherwise, it's in very good shape and you know, nicely finished. But it's quite high priced on their range, so you'd kind of hope for 200s, upwards of 200 quid, 250, something like that. You'd hope that Harley Bentons were making stuff that at least sort of stood out compared to other budget guitars in a similar range. Anyway, but they are very good. That is a very good guitar, so looking forward to that. And then the other one is a Fusion. No, sorry, that's the first one. The other one is a double cut in garish blue, which is quite fun as well. Anyway, right, that's me done. I will see you for one of those guitars and some other interesting ones soon. Thank you for watching.